Thank you very much. If everyone's at their seats, then I think we can begin. Good morning. I'm Caroline Davey. I'm Professor of Design, Innovation and Society at the University of Salford. I'm also Director of the Design Against Crime Solutions Centre, together with my colleague, Andrew Wotton. The Solutions Centre has been working for over 2 decades with partner organisations to address social challenges and real-world issues facing practitioners. And for the last 3 years, we've been working with a number of law enforcement and security research partners to deliver our EU-funded project, Cutting Crime Impact, in short, CCI. I'm very pleased to welcome you to our conference, the final event of the CCI project. It's called Designing Security Futures, Framing Security Through Human-Centred Innovation. For those of you with us here in Brussels, there will be presentations and question and answer sessions up until 1500 hours today. When you answer questions, if you please could wait to be given a microphone before asking your question, because the sessions are going to be live streamed. The presentations are going to be followed by a workshop, and the conference will close today at 1700 hours. I'm very pleased that we're showcasing the excellent research being conducted across Europe and helping to bring our research community together. During the coffee breaks and lunch breaks, you'll be able to visit the various exhibition stands for the other EU security projects exhibiting here and learn more about the tools and outputs produced by CCI. For those of you joining online, I extend a warm welcome. You can listen to the presentations and question and answer sessions. However, the online conference will close at 1500 hours because the interactive workshop is not being live streamed. There will be a pause in transmission, of course, over coffee and lunch breaks, and I'm afraid you'll have to make your own coffee. A few points of general housekeeping for those here in Brussels. There is a guarded cloakroom so that you can safely and conveniently leave your coats, bags, and luggage. The cloakroom is on the ground floor. There are toilets downstairs, and they can be accessed through the foyer. There are also rooms downstairs that we'll be using for the parallel LEA tool presentation tracks. To ensure the health and well-being of all those here in Brussels, and to comply with the updated COVID rules recently implemented in Brussels, I'd like to remind you, masks are mandatory at all times within the conference venue, except when eating or drinking. Do make use of the antibacterial hand wash and disinfectant materials around the venue. And do be assured that we are very pleased to welcome you here in Brussels, even if we have to forego some of the normal greetings, such as shaking hands. Finally, when accessing the venue again tomorrow, attendees will need to show proof of full vaccination or a negative PCR test or certification of recovery to be scanned. Thank you for complying with these rules. So, moving to the content of our conference today, I'm delighted to be able to introduce to you our opening keynote speaker, Mr. Andrea De Candido. Mr. Candido works for the Directorate General for Migration and Home Affairs of the European Commission, where he is acting head of the unit Innovation and Security Research, and is responsible for exploitation of results and outputs from security research. His unit drafted the Security Research Programme within the overall EU Research and Innovation Framework Programme, Horizon Europe, as it has become known. The CCI Consortium, and indeed many of the other projects here today, are supported by the European Research and Innovation Framework. Mr. Candido will be discussing the EU security innovation. So over to you, Mr. Candido. Just to say, be careful of the stairs.
Thank you very much, Caroline. And thank you very much to you and to the project for having invited me here today to say a few words in the opening of this final conference of the project. It is indeed a pleasure for me to be here today, not last because actually it is the first time that I am on stage opening an event in person since we closed down in March 2020. So it's quite exciting for me and really pleased to be here to do so. Unfortunately, the situation is evolving again in a way that everything seems to be closing down a bit throughout Europe. I hope this will be only a temporary measure and that we will be able to again go towards this kind of event, even if hybrid and not only in person. There is even an added value of having hybrid meetings because we can reach out to people that might not have been in any case able to come in person. Anyway, what I would like to say, first of all, I will not have slides. It is maybe something that is not common, but I prefer doing so. And I wanted to, in the next few minutes, just give you our overall impression as unit within the commission that has been responsible for the drafting of the work program, of what is our feeling towards what CCI has been able to achieve and is doing currently still. We have been carefully looking at the following the project throughout these years, and I can say that we are extremely satisfied with the results that have been achieved. And we are not only satisfied of the specific punctual results in the main 4 dimensions that have been addressed by the project, but we're even satisfied because the project has been addressing some more horizontal or general issues that we see fundamental in security research in general. So what is it that we especially liked in this project? Well, first of all, that it has been dealing with petty crime. Of course, this is deriving from an explicit request that we had in the work program, but it is important for us to demonstrate that, yes, you do have, when speaking about criminal activities, you do have organized crime, you do have terrorism, and these are things that are under the spotlight on a regular basis. But we also need to not forget petty crime, which is an as equally important dimension that is affecting the daily life of citizens. And so we're very glad to have been able to have a project dealing with this, a project that has delivered positive results, that we can on our side present up the line, even in order to demonstrate the relevance and importance of petty crime. We are then very glad that this project is not only about technologies. This is something equally important, and when we have to explain what security research is about, we always need to stress, we're always stressing, yes, there is a big part of it that is dedicated to the development of new technologies that then can be implemented in solutions that are made available to the end users, but it's not only that. There is even simply the development of knowledge that is equally important and equally as relevant in order to look into the future and to develop, to make the overall law enforcement dimension more effective and more efficient. And so we're very glad to see this human-centric approach that you're putting all over the place to say what you're doing, because this indeed is something extremely relevant for security research in general. And we're glad to see that you have been emphasizing in specifically on perceptions, on the role of citizens in contributing to making, contributing to the overall security of, be it cities, places, and so on and so forth. This is something that is coming up rather predominantly, not only in security research, but across research in Horizon Europe. and it's called social innovation, is how it's labeled under the Horizon Europe program. And it is one of the indicators that has been adopted for the Horizon Europe program to be able to measure its effectiveness. So how much is it taking into account social innovation throughout the whole program? So you can say that CCI has been a precursor of something that then has been more formalized under now Horizon Europe. Of course, when we're thinking about the involvement of citizens and the word perceptions, what is also extremely important about, in addition to the perception of security as such, is even the perception of citizens of what law enforcement is doing in terms even of introducing new technologies or adapting or introducing new processes and procedures. This is something that we are very careful about, and we're glad that the project has been dealing with it in detail, because the importance of guaranteeing a balance between the need or the instruments to make any place a more secure place, and at the same time to preserve civil liberties, fundamental rights, or privacy concerns, is something that we are heavily scrutinized about. We are called upon to look into regularly, and to be able to demonstrate that our projects, so what we are funding through EU public money, is looking into this dimension, is also something very important for us. Then we have, I think, the title of the conference today, Designing Security Futures, is another element that is very important. Why? Because we are also in a constant effort to demonstrate how research is not providing solutions for yesterday's problem. It is also doing so because, of course, research is always looking into ways of improving current capacity. But the role of research and the time research takes to deliver, to be able to deliver, is such that it is always projected towards the future. And this is extremely important for the wider community to understand, because we need research to we need to fully acknowledge the role of research, which is that to be able to develop the tools and the knowledge that is able, amongst other, to correctly address the future challenges that the security community will be facing. So this is about changing a bit the culture of the way that the law enforcement community, but even the border guards, the first responders, are currently thinking, which is to move a bit from a reactive approach, where you simply react to an event that is happening, towards a forward-looking anticipatory approach, which is more about trying to think what the future will be looking like in order to start working today, in order to be ready for when the future happens. This means driving innovation more than simply passively receiving innovation. It's a fundamental cultural change in the civil security dimension. It is already there in terms of mentality in other areas like defense or the space domain, but it is something that we really think needs to be transposed somehow, or we need to be inspired from how the other dimensions are working in order to transpose this kind of mentality as much as possible also into the civil security dimension. This in order to ensure that when we do use funds in order to support research, the outcomes of research can have a real impact. Meaning, if there is an appropriate planning process, then it means that research is triggered only when there is a clear requirement that is expressed from a relevant end-user community, and therefore there is someone that is there waiting for research to provide its outputs and ready to pick up the outputs of research, the so-called uptake of research outcomes, and do something with those results. Only this way we can ensure impact. And this leads me to the last point for which we very much appreciate the work that has been done by this project, and it's related to the impact and to the end users. In the course of Horizon 2020, we had decided, in order to increase the chances of impact of research projects, to make mandatory the participation of end users in the projects. And this in order to bring the end users closer to research and to be able to really drive the projects throughout their lifetime and not just have them waiting at the end of the line to see if anything popping up might be interesting. And I think the amount of law enforcement agencies that this project has been able to involve in the project itself is extremely relevant for us. We are very satisfied of this. We know how difficult it is from an administrative procedure to convince the law enforcement agencies, the border guards, or depending on the project, to become real beneficiaries in the project. But we're very satisfied of what you have been able to achieve as project in this respect, and for sure we will be using you as an example to demonstrate how it is effectively possible to do so. Lastly, allow me to end just stressing how it is important for the Commission to get feedback from projects. It is important to get feedback not in technical terms. It is important to get feedback in policy terms. So we invite each project to really make sure to be able to derive recommendations, to be able to derive conclusions from even a very technical initiative. This is less the case. That can be presented to a policy audience. So not only the end user community, but even the more overarching policy community. So to be able to demonstrate even to that community what is the concrete outcome that is made possible through public money in security research. With that, I would like to thank you very much for your attention. I would end it here, and I would hand it over back to Caroline again.
So thank you very much, Andrea, for your comments about CCI and also the insight that you provided in terms of how the research programme is moving forward. Some very exciting developments, and I'm sure everybody here would be very pleased to have had that insight from you in person. And as you say, I think there might be a time where it's more difficult to meet face to face, and we all very much appreciate that we can be here today. All right, so moving on, then we will move on to our presentation, which is about cutting crime impact. And I'm joined by my co-director, Andrew Wooten, and we're going to be telling you a little bit about cutting crime impact and the approach that we've adopted. So, cutting crime impact, as Andrea said, framing European security in a human-centred way. That has been very much our approach. In terms of the project title, practice-based innovation in preventing, investigating and mitigating high-impact petty crime. Just to say that the term petty crime we've used because that was in the funding call, and it is a term that is used at the EU level, basically to differentiate the work that we are doing, focusing on everyday crimes, with those projects that are considering things like terrorism, organised crime, etc. But when we use that term, we don't want in any way for people to think that we think that it is petty, in the sense that it is of small impact on citizens. Obviously, these are the sorts of crime, the burglary, the robbery, the assaults. These are the things that really impact on people's everyday lives. We've divided our presentation into a number of parts, and so we'd like to start by introducing you to the cast, many of whom you will have already met. We do have, and we're very fortunate in that we have 6 law enforcement agencies, and they really are at the heart of CCI. We have 2 national police forces, the National Police of the Netherlands, and also the Estonia and Border Guard. We also have regional law enforcement agencies. So we've got Greater Manchester Police, we've got the Landeskriminalamt in Lower Saxony in Germany, and we've got the Department of Interior from Catalonia. In terms of our consortium, then the law enforcement agencies are supported by research organisations such as the University of Salford, DSP Group, which is a planning and research consultancy, and the University of Groningen. And the University of Groningen has particular expertise in looking at ethical, legal and social issues, and was therefore very much involved in every work package with regard to CCI. We've also got organisations, networking organisations that have got connections to end users and to civil society. So we've got the Deutsche Prävention-Tag in Hanover, and we've got also the European Forum for Urban Security, which is based in Paris, but links to 250 local authorities across Europe. And we've also got our design consultancy, LOBA, who do all the communication work, and we're very grateful to today for everything that they've done in terms of sorting out the exhibition and also the live streaming of this event today. We've also been accompanied by an advisory board, and I should add that this advisory board have not just attended meetings, they've actually given practical help with a number of the outputs that have come from CCI. And we're very pleased that they're here today as well, and we're very appreciative of all the support that they've been giving us. So moving on into the focus areas that we are looking at in terms of CCI, then we have 4 focus areas. We have predictive policing, community policing, crime prevention through urban design and planning, and measuring and mitigating citizens' feelings of insecurity. So quite a broad number of approaches that we actually cover. In each case, 2 law enforcement agencies are focusing on a particular area. The overall aim of CCI was to adopt a preventative, evidence-based and sustainable approach to tackling high-impact petty crime. And in particular, we've been supporting our 6 law enforcement agencies in developing evidence-based tools that meet end-user needs and operational contexts. To achieve this, CCI adopted a design approach, which Andrew will tell you more about.
Thank you, Caroline. So, in terms of when we talk about a design approach, we very much take a broad definition of what we mean by design. Often the word design is used to mean styling, effectively fashion, what something looks like. But in CCI, we adopt very much the position that Steve Jobs takes, is that design is not just what it looks like and feels like, design is how something works. So we're drawing on areas like product design, service design, environmental design, and design approaches and theories like user-centered design, system design, design thinking, but most importantly, human-centered design. So CCI focuses on innovation and user-centeredness or end-user-centeredness, and we focus very much on problem framing and optimizing solution implementation. So making sure the things that were produced were actually going to be implemented. And innovation is very much in the context of the design discipline. So we've been looking at the ways in which innovation is enabled in different design fields and trying to adopt some of that. So if we look at the traditional approach of innovation in engineering and new product development, traditionally there was quite a linear approach in that a product that was existing would be analyzed, and from that analysis, a new product would be extrapolated, which may have some improvements that have come out of the analysis. So the design approach to innovation actually moves beyond this linear analyze, create dimension and adopts a process of abstraction where you're actually looking to abstract ideas from the initial concept and from that abstraction come up with potential new ideas. So you're moving on a different dimension of a real abstract dimension going vertically here. And then from these different abstracted ideas, concepts, as then they can be reconfigured into new options, and potentially that will lead to a new product which has not been, which is not just a straightforward iteration of the first product. So this, and a good example of this is the way Apple rethought when they came up with the iPod. There had been MP3 players for many years. Apple abstracted away to the whole experience of music and owning music and listening to music and came up with a whole ecosystem which effectively created a new segment in the market. So the CCI project process has involved this abstraction process, and we draw very much on human-centered design theory and practice. So human-centered design places the human being at the center of the design process and focuses on the human participants in any design system. So it was developed in the system design field, especially complex systems like aircraft management systems and management of nuclear power stations and that sort of thing, where there were massive problems caused by designs that were overly focused on the technology. And so it very much contrasts with technology-centered design. One of the symptoms of technology-centered design has been identified as something called the technology spiral. And this is where you have a performance or productivity requirement and a technological opportunity come along, and designers infuse the technology, with technology often seen as some sort of panacea. And then that results in the users being overwhelmed by complexity, maintainers being overwhelmed by complexity, and managers being overwhelmed by data. And then what happens is the designers react by producing technology fixes, effectively infusing more technology into the system, and this ends up with a system that there's increased complexity in use, increased maintenance complexity, and increased management complexity, which inevitably leads to a performance shortfall, especially when related to the initial inflated opportunities and expectations. But of course, by this time has marched on, and there's a new technology has come along or a new opportunity, and you have this spiral effect. Now, this was identified back in 1985, but it's still something that we've come across during the course of this project, happening currently in large police system integrations. So the idea is that human-centered design avoids this technology spiral by concentrating on the people throughout the system, the nature of their roles and needs, how their roles can be supported and how their needs can be met. And so we have human-centered objectives rather than technology that drive the process. And those objectives are to enhance the human abilities, so identifying what their abilities are and understanding them and how can we cultivate those, understanding what the human limitations are and devising compensatory mechanisms for that. One of the most famous human limitations was the invention of the undo command, because humans are very error tolerant. But computers aren't, so The undo command is something that everybody uses every day without thinking, but that's a classic compensatory mechanism for humans. And then the third objective is to foster human acceptance. So to understand people's preferences, their concerns and their values, and to try and ensure that that's maintained in the design. So this requires that you get insight into end user needs, their requirements and context. And this is something that we challenged our law enforcement partners to try and do in their work. So human-centered design is necessarily bottom up rather than top down, which is challenging in organizations that are often traditionally very top down. But it very much supports problem definition and reframing. There's a good quote by Russell Ackoff here: "We fail more often because we solve the wrong problem than because we get the wrong solution to the right problem." So we focus very much on human capabilities, agency, and responsibility, which is an important one. And that gives us an alternative perspective. So a good example is, what is the purpose of predictive policing? So from the textbook, you might read that predictive policing is a collection and analysis of data for identification and prediction of individuals or areas with increased probability of criminal activity to help develop policing interventions and prevention strategies. But from a human-centered perspective, at its basic level, the purpose of a designed predictive policing system is to support the human police officers who are responsible for preventing and fighting crime. And at the end of the day, there's always a human who is responsible for something rather than a machine. And I think at the moment, when we look at self-driving cars, they're going through that process at the moment of when something goes wrong, who is responsible. So understanding responsibility and supporting that is key. So such a design can't be wholly technology-centered, and technology is merely an enabler of human-centered objectives rather than some sort of panacea. And clearly this requires a deeper understanding of users and context, and so to adopt the human-centered mindset is to effectively adopt an attitude that is curious, empathetic, imaginative, collaborative, iterative, and humble. So in CCI, we basically mapped the CCI project process over a design process. So the design process often begins with a problem and opportunity, and then we have a number of phases of divergent and convergent thinking that take you through a process of getting to a final designed outcome. These phases are called discover, define, develop, deliver, deploy, and digest. And this, again, takes you from a problem to a brief to a designed outcome. And the idea is that that designed outcome is then put into practice. And over time, there's this digest phase where new opportunities emerge. And effectively, you can start the cycle again through a problem. So we've mainly focused on these first 4 stages in CCI. So we undertook early research. The LEAs took the research to understand end user requirements, and they understand the problem context in the discover phase. And then we ran design labs in the define phase to basically analyze the findings and generate insight and define solutions. And then in the develop phase, we designed and developed specifications for the tools. And then in the deliver phase, there was work packages to finalize and produce and demonstrate the tools. And we're now at the stage where we have our designed outcome, our CCI tools, and we're moving into the implementation and deployment phase of those. So the important bit for us was very much this front end, because it's all built on being able to get the research at the front end to properly understand things. So this front end research shouldn't be used to simply post-rationalize an idea you've already had, because that's a complete waste of opportunity, effectively, at this stage. So we developed a number of tools to help with our partners to undertake various bits of design research into their area that they were focusing on. And that enabled us to frame the focus areas and identify perspectives, to identify stakeholders in the different areas, and to mine for insight that enabled us to generate some new thinking. So the idea is in this stage to let go of the edge of the pool. So you may have some ideas of what you wanted to do. I know one of our partners who isn't here today was talking about when they were doing predictive policing, they had an idea for an algorithm that they were thinking they would do. But to basically park that idea and to let go of the edge of the pool and to do a deep dive and explore what's actually going on the front line in the area that you're looking at. And from that, to basically develop insight in this discover phase that then could be brought into the design labs where we work together to develop a number of potential concept directions that could be taken forward as tools.
Thank you, Andrew. So to our final part then, the results and reflections. So CCI undertook meaningful research to understand end user needs and their particular contexts. And I would say that critical thinking has been central to the design development process. And as I said before, ethical, legal and social perspectives were considered throughout CCI activities. And CCI has produced practical tools, and they've been demonstrated and they've been validated by end users. And the approach that we take is one that enables implementation by design. We are very much against shelfware. By that I mean we do not want to be the sort of project that produces something that sits on a bookshelf somewhere. We want to produce something that people are actually going to use to make their work better and to have a better impact on the societies that they serve. So today then is our final event, and you'll be able to see the results of our work. So partner LEAs have produced their tools. 8 tools have been developed, and so that's 2 in each of the CCI focus areas. The tools have been demonstrated in real-world context, and implementation is ongoing. So the tools are going to be revealed today. I should say nobody has produced a car, but perhaps on the next project. And so thank you very much to listening to our presentation today, and also to Andrea. We've also got short time for some questions, if people would like to pose some questions. Andrea, would you like perhaps come up onto the stage? Just to say, to remind you once again, that because we're being live streamed, could you take the microphone, please, when you're asking a question? Okay, so who's got the microphones? I think Dagmar has, fantastic. And is there another microphone? Yep, fantastic, okay. So would anyone like to ask a question? Very good.
Oh, yeah, excellent.
Before you ask... Excuse me. Thank you very much. If everyone that's asking a question would just like to introduce themselves as well, that would be excellent.
My name is Jaap de Waard. I'm employed by the Dutch Ministry of Justice and Security, and I'm one part of the advisory board of this project. I have a question for the Commission. I've seen quite a lot of these projects over the last years, and the CCI project, as far as I'm concerned, is quite successful compared to other projects. My main worry about it is that now we have 8, in my opinion, very good instruments, but now continuation, that's always the key, because it's already mentioned, putting things on the shelf is nice, but getting it into practice is another thing. So this is my main question. Does the Commission have any idea how to, well, make some suggestions how to implement, certainly on a policy level? And the other question is, could it be that there could be a continuation of this project? Because it finished, and in my opinion, you can use this, this concept for many other crime phenomena. So these are my main questions.
Thank you very much.
Yes, please.
Thank you very much for your question, which actually goes into, I think, the biggest challenge that we're currently facing, not only for this project, but for security research in general. I mentioned it before, it's the so-called uptake of research output. And here, I think we've got to go back to what is the purpose of security research and what is the final aim of security research. In order to actually understand that there is a joint responsibility between European level and national level. If we're speaking about the development of a new car that was on the screen before, the car will not be built in the basement of any of the Commission. It will not be built in the basement of any Ministry of Interior. It will probably have to be produced by industry. And the outcomes of research probably need some follow-up in terms of further development, integration, and so on, so for them to be integrated in this new car that will have to pop up. But in the end, it is most probably the local police authorities or the national police authorities that will be effectively buying the new car. We see that there is a big interest and level of participation in the research moment. But my open question is, are those entities, the organizations to which the end users that participate in the research activities, are they committed to do something after research? Are the member states that are coming to us in the program committee telling us that there is a requirement to address petty crime and to do something with that and asking us, please put a topic in the next work program to do something? Are they at the same time planning in order to be ready to do something themselves when the projects come to an end? This, for the time being, we see is not a linear process that goes from requirement to an end product on the ground. We're trying to go in that direction. For the time being, we see that research does have an impact, but more in a spin-off manner, meaning research, let's say developing a new technology or a project developing a new police car, might be looking into the new wheels, the new windscreen, the new seats, or so on and so forth, with the idea, let's do a police car in the end. Then for the time being, this police car does not necessarily happen, but the wheels are used to produce a lorry for police forces. The seats are used to produce the chairs to be used in a police headquarters. Of course, I'm saying whatever now, forgive me, but it's just to give you the idea. We have an impact, but for the time being, it's not linear. We should aim at having this linear impact, and this implies a close collaboration between the national, the local, and the European level. We on our side, we are looking, for example, each year the Commission gives a number, makes available a certain number of funds to the different member states, the so-called ISF funds, or in the border dimension now, the BMVI funds, so internal security funds or border management and visa instrument funds, that are there to support the national authorities in capability development, in capacity building. And one of the things that is specified in the regulation of these funds is that they are encouraged to look into using those funds to build on outcomes of research where they already had, of course, where there is a national interest in the research project itself. We, therefore, from the Commission side, we're again using our instruments to try and create a leverage, but it's mainly, if you will allow me, a matter of changing of culture, so that research is really triggered when there is a requirement, but there is already a plan to do something after. And if research is triggered by a requirement coming from member states sitting in the program committee that are overseeing the research process, then ideally there should be an intention to do something, a plan already when putting something on the table of the Commission for further consideration. We're not there yet. It can't change by writing a paper and saying it's got to happen, it won't happen. I think there are many indicators that are going in this direction that are showing that there is a bit of a change of culture and sensitivity in the civil security dimension. For what concerns the follow-up to this project, well, now we're starting to discuss, there will be a meeting next week with the member states authorities in order to understand what they see as requirements for future investment in research. So this is where I would invite you. Yes, telling me is fine, but if then I go to the table and your national representatives say, no, that's not a priority, then we have an issue. Thank you very much, and apologies for the long answer.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Just to say that we in CCI have not produced shelfware, so we have not produced things that are just sitting in somebody's bookshelf. What we've done is that each LEA tool is suited to that particular LEA. So when you go around and look at the exhibition, what you'll find is that they're not in English, the tools, they're actually in the LEA's own language. And they are suited to that LEA's particular context, and they are branded in a way that the LEA would like to have. So these are tools that are actually implemented by design and are being implemented. So we don't actually have this problem of what happens after the end of the project, that the tools are being implemented. And so, obviously, in terms of making things go forward, one thing we would like to be able to do is to track that implementation, because I think that's also important. It's not just enough to say they're being implemented. You have to demonstrate that, and that we would very much like to do. But I'm confident that the tools are being implemented. Has anyone else got a question for us?
Very loud voice. I do not need this. Hello?
No, it's because it's being live streamed.
Yes, this is Katerina Margariti. I came from university. I represent European University Cyprus. I am from the coordinating team of Law Game. It is a new project, Horizon 2020. Thank you for your hospitality, a very interesting project. I would like to ask, these tools that you have created and you have developed during the project, it was not predefined. It was according to the needs you have identified during the project, right?
Sorry, say it again. What was not predefined?
Predefined mean...
No, I know what that means, but...
It was not scheduled during the...
What is not scheduled?
The tools that you have developed within CCI project. It was according to the needs that you have identified during the project, right?
That's correct.
Through these design labs.
It is, yes.
So just to understand let's say the scope of the project. The other question is, you have followed the human-centered, as you say, design process, right? This is something different from the user design process. And what is exactly the difference, if I may?
Okay. Mm-hmm. Then
thank you very much.
You can answer the second one, but I'll just say something to your first question. Yes, you're right. The tools that were developed were not actually defined in the funding proposal. So what we did is we identified the focus areas, the 4 focus areas, predictive policing, community policing, etc. But we didn't say what tools would be developed. We said this is the process that we will go through to be able to develop the tools, but it was left open what they would be.
So the difference with the human-centered approach and the user-centered is that the user is giving that role of being the user. I think the user-centered approach is often used in software and that sort of project, whereas the human-centered approach is not just looking at the person who is going to be using the product, it looks at all the stakeholders in the system who may have an impact on it. So, for example, in the community policing, obviously it was a tool being done for, and you can, Roberta will be presenting that later today. It's something that's designed for a particular police force, but actually the people it impacts is the local community and also all of the partners that the police work with in delivering security. So they aren't officially users of the tool because it's being used by the police, but they're actually humans in the process of community policing, and their needs and their issues and their sort of perceptions of what should be happening had to be taken into account. So it's just a broader approach than just looking at that role of user. It's actually looking at all of the things that humans have that make them potentially sabotage things that are being put in place that they don't want to do. So there's all the politics around how people perceive their role and how people get value out of their own job. Understanding that is important. Otherwise, if you undermine people's perception of what their role is, they may well not say anything to you, but you will find that it's very difficult to actually implement stuff. So you need to understand all these nuances around how humans operate in order to try and better design something that fits into that system. And often these things are emergent in the sense that you present a prototype to them and it sort of comes out that they're not happy because of this reason. And so that's something that involved in the process of not just the research, but the prototyping that was done in terms of developing the potential outcome for each of the LEAs. Yeah.
Thank you. We've possibly got time for one more quick question if somebody wants to ask something. Okay.
Thanks. So I'm Emanuela Biffi from the European Forum for Restorative Justice, and I just wanted to know again about the tools, if they were created using participatory methodologies and, methodologies actually bringing together the people involved, so the police or the civil society organizations, and if so, how? What methodologies were they used?
Okay, do you want to answer that one?
I think was it participative methods you were interested in?
But if you use participatory methodologies, so if these tools actually were co-created.
I think some did. It depended on the nature of the tool. So some did, some to a greater or lesser extent, but they were often not necessarily participative with just communities, but also participative with end users. So in terms of involving them, again, that prototyping process and trying things out is the way that was done. But the actual definition of problems, that was done through this front-end research with the end users and the humans that were involved in the systems, and then bringing that to the design labs. So it wasn't so much about defining the problem, I don't think. It was more about options for how to actually address the problem that other people were brought in. But again, as I said, the best bet is, if you're interested in the methodology side, is talk to the partners who did their individual tools, because everybody did something that suited their particular context.
Thank you very much. So I'd just like to thank once again Andrea De Candido for his excellent talk and the insight that he provided for us. And thank you to all of you for your questions. So we are moving now on to the next section. We have now the presentations of the LEA tools. And if you'd like to look at your badges, then some of you have a little square. Is it under the shield? Under the shield. And you are able to look at the presentation downstairs. I think Dagmar is going to guide you down there. And so we have more of a workshop setting downstairs. So those of you with a little square, which is under the shield, the CCI shield on the back, then please could you follow Dagmar and you can go downstairs to watch the LEA tool presentations.
Come away from the mic.
Okay, so who am I inviting up? On safer communities, Monica Dinners and Veronica Neves from Lisbon Municipal Police. If you'd like to come on the stage and to present your tool, please.
Can I use this? Yes.
All right, then let me introduce you. If everyone would like to take their seats again. Thank you very much. So it's my great pleasure then to introduce to you Monica Dinners, and she's from the Lisbon Municipal Police, and she's going to be presenting their tool, which is called Safer Communities. Over to you, Monica.
Thank you, Caroline. Hello, everyone. It's very nice to be here face to face and with our partners. So I'm going to present the Lisbon Community Policing Toolkit that we have been developing and to okay. Just to give you an overview about in Lisbon about the community policing model. We have this participatory planning approach, which is being developing by the Lisbon Municipal Police in partnership with citizens and organizations from the city. What we have been doing over the last 10 years, more or less, it's been for each neighborhood in Lisbon. We have started with a pilot experience, and we have been adapting in each neighborhood a community policing. So before we have the community policing officers in the field, we have a planning process that takes about 1 year, and we plan it together with our partners. And for that, we have 4 main steps. The first one is to build a safety partnership. We have people from the community representatives, from neighborhood associations, from local institutions, from municipal services that agree to work with the municipal police to plan the implementation of the model. After this, we have monthly meetings to plan the introduction of the future policing officers, and for that we have a diagnostic which problems should be addressed by community policing, and then we have, in the third step, we built the desirable profile of those officers. What for that particular neighborhood is important that these officers should have? Is it important to be a male or female police officer or not? So all of these, through focus group, we have and discuss all this knowledge and information to select the best team to that particular neighborhood. And in the final moment, we have the training. The selection and training, it's done then the training together, both the new police team, other police officers from the organization, and the partnership. So after that year process, we have the community policing team doing the patrols on foot in the neighborhood, enjoy those monthly meetings to plan and to address problems. And this has been working well in Lisbon because indeed the partners have the ownership of the model. It's not just about the police, we have done it together with our partners. That's why we call it community policing. Under the CCI research, we have trying to develop how to improve this model. And when we were analyzing, one of the things that for us it was important and it was a problem, it's the frequent diversion of those officers that need to be in the neighborhood, to be in their daily communication with citizens, but they were being diverted to other police tasks for several reasons. Sometimes community policing, because it has a preventive approach, it's not deemed to be so a priority because there are other police priorities that need to be addressed. But this brings a problem because those community policing officers, because they establish this relationship and trusting relationship within community, but if they are being removed frequently, it's difficult to gather that commitment. So when we were under the research was how to find a way to manage to those police officers to don't be so diverted from police, from these policing neighborhoods. And what we discovered doing the research is, and it was something that this was really through the project, because we're doing, and it worked well, the planning phase and the buy-in from our partners, but then we needed that also from the police organization. So we understood that all this participatory planning process, although it worked well bottom-up, it really needed also top-down support. We needed this, especially from senior police officers that have the decision to manage those teams, to feel the importance of the teams being in those neighborhoods. So that's the focus of our tool, was how to involve and to help those senior police officers to have a clear understanding of the model, to understand this need to have these teams dedicated to their role in the field. So for that, it was important to develop both a communication set of tools. The toolkit has these communication tools to identify and clearly demonstrate how this model works, but also a strategic planning approach, how to involve those key decision makers on community policing and how to get them also more involved in the planning in order to support and to value over time the need to have the officers dedicated to their roles. So the tools, we have developed communication tools, a brochure, digital instruments, a video that in a very clear way could very easily be understood. What were those planning phases? Why was it important for police officers that start to establish this trusting relationship with partners during training? How it was so important for them to be kept on the neighborhood and not be diverted. And also about the strategic planning session, how they could work in the municipal police organization. So the brochure has an overview and the goals of the model. It has also the different planning stages. Even if a new senior police officer come to work to the police to understand and didn't participate in those models, to understand how it was developed. Also, key message, why it is important and the unique specific intervention of those officers in partnership, because although they are on daily foot patrols, they also need to be in monthly meetings and to be able to attend them, to work with partners. And the brochure gives, from a very clear way, this information. We also ask during this process of developing these materials for opinions and to be able also to participate in this during the development of this tool. One other component of the toolkit, we have a pen with the digital instruments. Just going to pass, where we have been developing a video with precisely also with the participation of those senior police officers, and also to make from a very clear way what is the model, what are the different, why is it so important for the officers to be present, and we have a shorter and a longer version. This longer version with testimonials, both from senior police officers and decision makers, but also from partners and residents that could give their own testimonial about the importance of this model. So it has this both to communicate, but also to make clear, because if the model is not well understood within the police organization, it's very difficult then to, over time, to support it, because it is seen as a model that it is important, but perhaps there are other priorities. So these materials help to give that information and a better and clear understanding about this model. The strategic planning sessions, they are also collaborative meetings, not only with key decision makers within the police organization, but with other stakeholders. And because lots of time is also a constraint, because it's difficult to have and to plan discussing and planning these models, or to think about how to improve community policing. So we develop also an instrument and timetables so that the key decision makers and senior police officers could plan in advance to be able to participate in the morning or in an afternoon together to think about how to improve the model. And this requires time, and it is a way also to organize this participatory planning strategy from within the police organization. So in the demonstration process, we had, it was during a pandemic context, but we were able to do it inside the municipal police, both face-to-face with some intervenients. We presented the brochure, the video, what was being developed, and the planning sessions methodology. But we also openly to other participants through online meetings, and there was an invitation from the commander to all the staff from the municipal police, so that we could be to be evaluated, and other colleagues could give their information about the tools. We also, in the demonstration process, have a planning session, and to test also how these meetings could work, how could we find time and the strategy to address, we think different themes about community policing, but with key decision makers, the ones that can make the difference to support to to value and to support the community policing in the neighborhoods. And we also distribute the tool to other stakeholders in the city, both from political level to local partners, to also present what we have been developing. In the launch event, these are some of we have the presentation, the video, we train the strategic planning session, and from the results and from the online survey that we have done, and from also the evaluation during these moments, it has been considered positive. It was very considered, the fact that it explains clearly. It was more easily to understood why it was important to have this autonomy from the police, community policing officers to be and to stay in those dedicated neighborhoods. The video also, with the testimonials, it was presented and considered a good element. And also the brochure. It gave, because when we're developing, usually we can do it a presentation, the staff or there is more familiar with the model, but now there is a tool that anyone inside the police organization or partners can present it and in a very clear way to other partners and to share or to understand this model. So it's been a very effective way to pass the model. And also the planning sessions gave the opportunity to give some new measures and ideas on how to develop and improve the community policing model. So currently we are implementing these planning sessions. Although due to the pandemic restrictions, we have to take into account these meetings face-to-face. For instance, sometimes we have to, it's not easy and not to make it online, but we are trying to adapt. Also to use it during the training. For instance, on community policing training, we have to do it online, again, taking into account the pandemic restrictions, but some of the things we discussed during the planning sessions, it was implemented. So it was a way, it's a work in progress, but it's a methodology that it's being incorporated within the police organization. And we have been also making the video available to other contexts in the city and to be used by the community policing team. In terms of, we also share and disseminate the tool to other organizations, both in national level and international level. And it's been a way that, for instance, the fact that the video is available on YouTube, you can very easily see it on YouTube. It's also very easy when we are sharing with other colleagues that are going to the municipal police and speak other language, and to use it and to use subtitles automatically, which took us previously perhaps more time to explain and to share. It's been more easier to do it. And within our own partnerships, when we are asked to develop a new community policing in a new neighborhood, these tools help to present it in a very clear way about the model. And in terms of future implementation, we are going to keep using it, just as been said previously, on the seminars that we are doing locally and nationally and international level, to use it during the training courses. And we are focusing very much on these strategic planning sessions in order to get this buy-in from within the police organization, just to have the same success as we have within the community, to defend and to support the model, but we need this balance. Also to have the support from within the police organization, and that's in these two ways that we are doing and using our tools to support the model. Thank you.
Just to say, sorry, before we move on, sorry, you can answer some questions. Yeah, sorry. Before we move on, just to say that we have got 10 minutes for some questions. So if anyone would like to ask a question, then please say now, and you can use the microphone. No? Then we shall move to the next presentation, and it's just left for me to thank Monica, and just to say that in terms of community policing in Lisbon, I do urge you to actually look at the video and the communication material about community policing. The reason for that is that when we say community policing, we often think that we're all talking about the same thing. In fact, we're not. The approach that is adopted in Lisbon, I think, is unique. The way in which they work with the local community to actually recruit local police officers is very different, and I think it's very much worth looking at it. Sorry, you'd like to ask a question. Do ask. Yes, do so. Do you want to take the microphone and introduce yourself, Julia?
Hi, I'm Julia Hall from Design for Security at Greater Manchester Police. And I was just wondering, Monica, if actually you've improved through the project your ability to maintain that abstraction for your community police officers. So have they managed to stay within the role that they're now placed within for a greater proportion of time?
Thank you, Julia. We have been, when we develop, indeed, I think this brings within the police organization a change because of the image. I have with me the commander of the municipal police. Chief Cordisho is the coordinator of the community policing team. And Ligia Trepado, she's the community policing officer. And I think it will be perhaps because they are end users also, and it was, if they also, because I think this was a chief in the image of the community policing. We have different services within the municipal police, and community policing, because it's a preventive approach, sometimes it's not so much considered if there is a priority, it has to be dealt. But it was important to reinforce within the police organization how important it was to maintain those police officers like Ligia in the field. Because if they, although they are needed elsewhere, if they don't commit with that particular community, in that particular neighborhood, people would feel perhaps less, trusting less, because are they going to be there or not? And I think this tool and the quality of the materials, it give importance also. And it's a brand. We didn't have a brand for community policing. And now we have this logo. I think it helps a lot within the police organization. Because for the community, people already buy in, because it was considered useful. But we need to maintain those officers dedicated. I don't know if we have time just, or the commander or the chief, if you, to support, because I think it's a barrier, isn't it, to be used. Is it considered well or not? Because I'm from the municipal police, but in this planning and following up. Just concorda. Se concorda com este, que se ajudou, estas ferramentas ajudaram para o crescimento comunitário, a imagem.
Hi, Joaquim Gordish, Municipal Police. Yes, this is very important to understand how we're doing, and the way to doing. Because support with a presentation, it's near. It's better we have a support of a paper to talk with our partnerships and says that we do that. Or we propose to do that. It's very important. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Just to say, we do have a lot of representatives here from Lisbon Police, so do take the opportunity to speak with them, particularly those that are end users. And thank you very much for your excellent presentation, Monica. Okay, so I'm very pleased now to move on to the second tool in relation to community policing. And we've got here today Dr. Roberta Signori from Greater Manchester Police in the UK. And she's going to be talking about the GMP tool that she developed together with the other researchers and teams at Greater Manchester Police. And that tool is called Community Connect. So over to you, Roberta.
Okay, hello everybody. My name is Roberta. I am a CCI Research Fellow for Greater Manchester Police, and today I will be presenting the work that GMP has done in community policing and the tool that we have developed. Today with me there's also my colleague Katie. She took over from me in July 2021 when I went on maternity leave, and she will be able to answer any question you might have regarding the latest developments of the implementation of the tool. Sorry? Okay. So during the first 6 months of the CCI project, we basically spend time with our neighbor policing officers or community policing officers, which we call NBOs, and our neighbor policing staff, which we call PCSOs. We shadow them, and we collected interviews with key GMP partners and people in local communities to understand the context of community policing in Greater Manchester, what were the issues, the problems, what were the experiences of end users. What we found is that PCSOs and MBOs, in order to deliver effective community policing and especially effective community engagement, they have to acquire unique, in-depth understanding of their local area. They need to understand the issues of the local area, the people, and the dynamics between the groups living in a specific area, in a beat or a neighborhood. And therefore they have to acquire a sort of knowledge that it's tacit, it's mainly experience-based. You can't find this sort of information in any GMP databases or documents. It's a personal knowledge because it is formed through relationships, and it's context-dependent because each area is unique, and so are the people who live in it. And therefore, it's a sort of knowledge that constantly changes and evolves. And in order to build this knowledge, and in order to effectively engage with local communities, they have to build relationships that are based on trust. Sorry. Okay. So the problem is when a PCSO or MBO move to another post and they leave their beat, they take with them this unique baggage of connection and knowledge. And we found that the redeployment of PCSOs and MBOs out of their beat, of the neighborhood, without a proper handover, constitutes a major source of frustration for communities and police partners. And it also has a negative impact on citizens' perception of GMP. and their trust in the police. We also identified several risks of PCSOs and MBOs leaving without having the time to do a proper handover. This includes the fact that important partnerships initiatives might be disrupted. GMP relationships and connections with local communities are jeopardized, and GMP also may lose important intelligence sources. And another problem is that vulnerable people or people at risk of victimization who used to have a point of contact from GMP in their area are left with no support. So, as you can see from the quotes that I'm showing you now, we identify this issue of lack of continuity of neighbor policing roles as the most pressing problem. And it was identified not only by our community policing officers, but also by the stakeholders of community policing, including GMP partners and people in the local communities. The main problem is that, as I mentioned before, because you have to acquire that unique knowledge of a local area, in order to do so, you have to build relationship and connections, and you have to build that trust that allows this relationship to thrive. But obviously, building trust is a long-term task. Is very time-consuming. And when you lose a key member of staff, you don't just lose the knowledge that they built, but also the relationship, which has to be built from scratch, and that affects reciprocity and trust between the parties. So what was the solution that we designed? The solution that we designed is called GMP Community Connect, and it is a handover protocol that is specifically designed for PCSOs and NBOs. And it is to be used when a PCSO or MBO leave their beat and move either to another area, or they move to another role within GMP, or they leave the organization altogether. So how does this tool work? There are 4 main components. The first component is called a community map, and it is a document that is filled in by the living PCSO or MBO, and it aims to capture a PCSO or MBO unique knowledge of a local area, of a beat. Then there's a community map annex, which is basically a further document that provides more space for living officers to write whatever they deem relevant. And then the third component is the briefing day, which is actually the most important part of the handover protocol, because it's a face-to-face meeting and walk around involving the living officer and the newly appointed officer. The fourth component is called social media handover notification, and it explains how the handover should be communicated to the wider community on neighbor policing team's social media. So, as you can see here, the community map is a brief document. We are not asking living officers to write a thesis about their area. We are asking living officers to identify and prioritize the most important pieces of information and contacts regarding their own area. For instance, we are asking officers to identify key relationships with local communities or key places in the area that have some relevance for the purposes of community policing, or identify key partners, or some 3 top community priorities in their beat. And we also provide space in the community map and in the annexes for further notes, so officers can write in narrative form whatever they need to write. And we are also asking living officers to indicate whether they wish to be contacted after they have left their post by the newly appointed officer for the sole purpose of arranging a briefing day. And this is very helpful because, unfortunately, at GMP, very often PCSOs and MBOs are moved around with very little notice, so they leave before someone else can take their place. But they still work for the organization, so they might still be available to be contacted for arranging a chat with the newly appointed officer or a proper briefing day. So the briefing day, as mentioned before, is the core of this handover process. It's a core because it is the actual moment, the actual face-to-face meeting when the leaving officer and the newly appointed officer come together and they go through the community map together, they discuss it, and then they go for a walk around the beat where basically they go and meet the key people, the key contacts identified in the community map. They go and they see the key places identified in the community map. So really, the community map is a document that aims to inform, guide, and support the briefing day, which is really the core of the of this handover process. And the fact that they meet, the leaving officer and newly appointed officer meet face to face, and not only between each other, but they also meet people in the community, help to ensure a smoother handover and helped also to preserve those connections that GMP has managed to build within the local area. So the last part of the handover protocol is the social media handover notification. We basically provide 2 template messages, one for leaving officers and one for newly appointed officers, that neighbor policing teams can post on their social media so that the wider community is informed that someone has joined the team or someone has left the team. In terms of the demonstration, we ran the demonstration of the tool from October 2020 to March 2021, and in order to do so, we contacted the neighbour policing teams in Greater Manchester. We told them this is a new tool that we have developed. If someone is leaving within this time frame, please, can they do the tool and can they come back to us and give us feedback? So we received feedback from 3 leaving officers and 1 newly appointed officer. And the feedback was actually positive. The community map was said to have everything a newly appointed officer needed in order to start the new job. And also officers appreciated the fact that finally at GMP there was some guidance regarding the handover, because before our tool there wasn't really anything, any guidance or any the handover. Some officers did the handover out of their own initiative, but there wasn't any guidance whatsoever. So in terms of the implementation of the tool, we took several steps. The first one was to turn this tool into an official GMP procedure, meaning that the Community Connect procedure has been published on the Force Policy intranet site, and all staff and all officers at GMP have been informed that this new procedure, and they've been requested to familiarize with it. Then we looked into training, and we included the link to the intranet page that hosts the tool, and also we included the video explaining, illustrating this tool into the PCSO's training, and we circulated all this material among PCSO recruits, so that now every PCSO that starts at GMP knows that this handover is there for them when they will leave. And we're also, my colleagues are working on developing an additional online training package, which is available for all officers and staff at GMP. And then we worked with the DRMUs. The DRMU stands for District Resource Management Unit. In Greater Manchester, there are 10 districts. Each district has their own DRMU. A DRMU deals with officers who request to leave. So we worked with the DRMU in the city of Manchester, in the district of the city of Manchester, and we worked in we basically asked them to embed this handover protocol into their standard process, meaning that now when an officer sends a leaving request to their DRMU, the DRMU automatically send them an email saying, you have to do this tool, and they also send an email to their supervisor, so that the supervisor has to make sure that the leaving officer actually does the tool. And this process has received very positive feedback by the coordinator of the DRMU in the city center. He said that he was very positive about the new procedure because it gives the first platform to a platform for standardizing the handover process. And now we are working towards getting all the DRMUs in all the districts in Greater Manchester to do exactly the same, so that now every time someone leaves, they are automatically prompted by the DRMUs to do the tool. Sorry. So in terms of my concluding comments, I think what was really great about the CCI project, and especially the design methodology that we use, was the fact that we were able to work with end users to identify a problem, a huge problem that was affecting local communities, key GMP partners, but wasn't really in GMP radar, wasn't within their main priority, it wasn't on their agenda. And we also work collaboratively with end users, especially during the prototyping phase of the project, to develop a toolkit that is very practical. It's very easy to use. It's inexpensive, but it does provide the first. It basically represents the first step towards increasing the professionalism of community engagement, and it also helps GMP to improve their support to citizens and local communities, while obviously preventing the loss of invaluable knowledge, and especially the connections that PCSOs and MBOs build over the years. And we believe that it's a tool that can be easily transferred to other police forces. But in order to be effective, it has to be matched by adequate recruitment and redeployment strategies that take into consideration the fact that you can't just move neighbor policing officers or staff around without giving the time to do the handover, because you're jeopardizing the connection that built, the trust that they're created, and therefore the work that they have done. So this is basically the end of my presentation. I don't know if Katie has any update in terms of implementation. If not, I'll take the questions.
Fantastic. Katerina, do you want to just check and see whether lunch is available? Just to say thank you very much to Roberta and to everyone from GMP for the excellent presentation today, but also this very, very interesting tool. One of the important things was that this isn't some kind of piece of technology. This is something that actually allows face-to-face or supports face-to-face interaction between the officer that is leaving the organisation or leaving their post and the one that is taking over. And to be honest, I think it would have application to a lot of areas, because I know quite often it is the case that somebody leaves and people are not properly informed and that there's no proper handover. So we have got time then for some questions. Would anybody like to ask a question? Thank you. If you'd like to take the microphone.
Hi, I'm Margot Caron. I work at the prevention service of the commune of Uccle here in the region of Brussels. We have some teams of community policing, but it's civil community policing, so we're not attached to the police. I just have 2 questions. One is the responsibility of this tool, of giving it, so I understand it's in the training and stuff, but is there a defined person or within the units or within the HR that is responsible of making sure that these people actually fill in the form and that after the briefing day is done? So if that exists, where is that person? And another question is, do you have generally any evaluation that's done periodically of the neighborhood where they work, of important zones, important contacts? Does that exist on a general basis, and is that also given to the people during the briefing day? Thank you.
Okay, so both in terms of the responsibility of the tool and the evaluation, I think the role of the DRMU is crucial because obviously the responsibility of the tool sits with the supervisors of, should sit with the supervisors of PCSOs and MBOs. The problem is some supervisors might not give much importance to community policing, or some might forget. So the DRMU plays a crucial role in reminding supervisors that every time someone leaves, they have to ensure that the toolkit is done. And that's why they automatically send an email, not just to the leaving officer, but also to their supervisor, because then they have to update the DRMU back and say, yes, this has been done, and I'm happy with it. So that's where the responsibility should sit, and that's what we are working towards. In terms of the evaluation, again, I think we haven't done yet an evaluation because we are working now on the implementation of the tool. But I think going forward, it would be, again, probably very helpful to work with the DRMUs who get to work with living officers and with their supervisors in order to understand, is this toolkit working, and are PCSOs and MBOs doing it? Because they have... They basically know who is left, when and how, and where to, and they know who has done the tool and who hasn't done it. And I think Katie, I was talking with Katie before, and she was saying that when she had a conversation with the coordinator of the DRMU, he said that he so far hasn't received any complaint about the tool, and he say, if I haven't received a complaint, it means that people are happy with it, because they tend to complain, send a lot of complaints for when they're not happy about things, when they ask to do things that they're not comfortable with. Nobody has done any complaint. But we still haven't looked into how to evaluate the tool, but that's what I can give you at the moment, that we are still in the implementation phase. And I think going forward, if we want to evaluate this tool, that's probably where we should be looking at. We should be working with the DRMUs. And obviously, if all the DRMUs in the city of Greater Manchester will adopt the same process as the city of Manchester, then it will be very easy to do that.
Thank you very much. Just to explain that the purpose of CCI was to demonstrate the tools, and that Roberta in particular has done a lot of work before she went on maternity leave to make sure that Community Connect is actually implemented. So she has embedded it in with procedures, she's had the right meetings with people, and obviously she's been supported by members of the team, many of here today. And so she's done an excellent job in getting a very important tool embedded within Greater Manchester Police. We've still got time for some more questions. Would anyone else like to ask a question? Yep. Would you like to take the microphone?
I have a question, and actually it's for both of you, for Monica and Roberta. And it's concerning the attitudes, and more like I was wondering actually if there was any resistance from the police in terms of using these tools. And if there was, how did you deal with that? And if there was not, actually I was wondering if it's not the case that maybe this type of tools that are always accepted or integrated or used, but then people who are more open and how to reach then the other type of professionals who might be more resistant. So it's really about the resistance of the tool and how to work in this type of cases. And it's for both of you or even for the police in the room.
When we demonstrated the tool, I was personally very confident of the work that we had done, because the prototyping process took ages and was very thorough, and we involved police officers and we involved people in the local community and GMP partners. And so I was very happy and confident with the tool. And when it was time to demonstrate it, we basically contacted neighborhood policing teams and say, if someone leaves, please tell them to do the tool. What we found is that I think this can be applied to other tools in other police forces. But when you give something useful to police officers, it doesn't mean that they will do it necessarily, even if it's something useful, because there are other dynamics involved. The main problem we had was that it was in the middle of the lockdown when we were doing the demonstration, and communication wasn't easy because it was remote, it happened remotely. And a lot of police officers did not really understand what this was about, or they were very defensive that, oh my God, we're asked to do yet one more task. There's more work that we have to do, which is not what the tool is about, because as I said before, the community map is very quick. You can fill it in 5 minutes. The real core of the handover process is the face-to-face meeting. But because some officers were a bit defensive, they didn't want more work to do because they thought it's going to be about paperwork. They did not engage well, or maybe they didn't look into the handover protocol. They just did the community map, and they didn't do the briefing day, because they actually didn't look into what we were asking. But those who did do the tool in the right way, in the right circumstances, and following all the process, they were happy. I haven't got any negative feedback. I think the resistance is getting officers to understand that this is not about paperwork, first thing, because they're fed up with paperwork, they have enough. And this is about them. It's GMP saying your work is really valuable. We're not going to jeopardize it by just disregarding, move you, and forget about what you've done. So it's getting that understanding that it's difficult. But once they get there, I never met an officer say, "Oh no, we don't need it. Oh my God, I don't." So it's about communication, and that is a huge problem. But once you get that part right, then the rest is, I think, there wasn't any resistance I noticed.
Just to add to that, I think that was really an issue to do with the COVID restrictions, because I know that if, for instance, that Roberta was very much, she was also stuck at home, she was having to rely on email, and it limited her ability to actually properly engage with people sometimes during GMP because of that particular time. There were the lockdown restrictions, but not only that, but GMP actually had a lot of work to deal with because of those restrictions. So that did actually compound things. But as Roberta said, the tool itself is so easy to use. It requires the officers to provide the essential information and really no more than that unless they want to. And because of that, I think it's a very, I so wish that more people would adopt that approach when they produce their forms and their procedures and things, that they actually thought of the end users, trying to understand what is required, filling in that information, and that is very much what has been done in Community Connect. So it is an excellent tool, I think, from that point of view. We've got another question, which I think is from Monica.
Just to answer very quickly also, for us, I think during the process, the resistance was about time, because it's time consuming. And to take officers to, okay, let's talk about it and plan it, because there is a lot of things going on at the same time. So I think for the strategic planning sessions, and to have that morning, because we had already the date, to make the meeting, and it was important, don't forget, it's really important to plan it and to discuss it. I think it was on the first one that after the demonstration, then the first time is really, we are always fighting against time. But then at the end of the planning session, the results, and because we are listening to each other and to giving opinions, and to have not only the police operational decision, but also about thinking and taking ownership of the model. And that, and I can say that one of the things that make me realize that change was that usually senior officers say, oh, you're police model, because I'm from the planning team and from the beginning of this community policing. And I notice a change, a shift from your policing model to the community policing model, or not so much but it's not a specific unit within the police, but it's in a more broader. So this sense of ownership, that was really what we're looking at. We could feel that, and I think these planning sessions help that buying in from all. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to ask a question? No? Then I will just add, I think that was a very important question regarding the time that police officers have, because I know, for instance, when we organise an event like this, that you have to be aware that there are constraints on people's time, that sometimes things occur and people have to respond to that. And I think it's very important that when we have these European projects that we do not waste people's time, that we look at involving them in meetings, etc., when their input is needed, that when they are there, that their time is recognised as being valuable and that it's well prepared and you get the input that you need, and then you let people to get on with their day-to-day jobs. And so I'm very grateful that in terms of the community policing tools, that because the researchers have been so close to their community policing officers, and because they've done the research with them, that they've been able to take these factors into account and develop something that is actually useful for them. And in the case of in Lisbon, then obviously the idea of that tool is to make it so that community policing can be delivered on the ground and police officers are not diverted to other activities where that's going to undermine community policing. So both of these tools, although they're very different in their approach and the problem is different, they both look at how can you make sure that the very important approach, which is community policing, is actually delivered on the ground. And I think that's something that all of us here, I'm sure, would support. So once again, thank you very much to both our presenters today. And just to say that we are doing well in terms of time. It's nearly 5 to 1 now. So I think we can safely break for lunch, and that lunch will be available. And for those of you that are listening online, I say goodbye, and you can come back at 2 o'clock when we will resume. Thank you very much. Now to the CCI tool presentations for this afternoon. And the presentation that we've got up here is going to be on perception matters. But some of you have got a square under your CCI badge on, and it shows that you can watch the presentations downstairs. So if there's anyone that's got a square on their badge underneath the CCI shield, then if you'd like to go downstairs. If not, then I think most people have already gone down already, so I shall move on. Okay, welcome back everybody, and we've now got our feelings of insecurity tool, which is going to be presented by Francesc Gulen, and he is from the Department of the Interior in Catalonia. And his tool is called Perception Matters. So thank you very much, and over to Francesc.
Thank you, Caroline. Okay. That's on me. Okay. Good afternoon to everybody. Thank you for coming here to listen to the explanation of our toolkit. Well, our toolkit tried to face the problem of the subjective character of the security, because what is risky and people are afraid of is not done. It's not given. It's not objective, but it depends on personal and social factors. Public opinion and mass media has a lot of influence. Sometimes what the media say or what the people think is quite remarkable in terms of making people feel safer or unsafer. Okay. Objective indicators, although everybody is looking for objectivity, some people claiming that's objective. We don't want to talk about anything depending on ideology or morals or perception. We want objective things, but it doesn't exist. It doesn't exist. There are not objective indicators of insecurity. What we can see is objective conduct. What we can make objective is the people conduct due to their feeling of safety. Depending on how feel they safe, they carry out or they prevent carrying out some activities, and that can be made objective. That's important. Okay. So in this framework, outbreaks of perception of insecurity are the ground of political stress. When people go to the beat saying we feel unsafe, our neighborhood is awful, we don't dare to get out or to let our children to go to the park, that causes trouble in the political area, or when people go to the town hall or to the mayor or to the media to say that. And the question is that these expressions, you don't know what's behind at the moment they raise. You cannot say, but it is due because of several murders that took place in the neighborhood. You don't know. You don't know. You know that people are saying we feel unsafe, and you should look for the factors that provoking that people express that they feel in that way. So if you want to be able to design the proper measures to cope with the background, you need to know what the grounds are behind. And historically, the traditional response has been, we will send the police. More police officers in the area. When people say that they feel unsafe, we will solve the problem. And without having a look on what's behind that. And normally the problem remains. You send the police, maybe in some cases, at the first moment people seem to be more comfortable, but some days before, some weeks before, the problem was still there, and people came back to say, we feel unsafe. So, our question was, what do we need in order to help public actors? I don't mean uniquely the police. The public actors in the field of security, how can we help them, assist them on coping with that? Okay? The idea was how could we help them, assist them on make the proper diagnosis and to identify what's behind the causes of the feelings of insecurity, and to propose effective response, because we are talking about assisting people who take measures, who take decisions. And the theory is very good, the analysis is very good, but everything should be positive in order to make them take the proper response. Otherwise, we will be failing. Okay, it should be clear and easy to use. There exist already manuals, a lot of manuals, fantastic manuals about the topic we are dealing with, but they need something which could be practical when they have to manage to face a particular problem. They could always resort to manuals, but they are already there. Okay, and the toolkit should be designed for frontline operators, not for the backline or for the people designing strategies. No, for people that are in charge of responding. That's important. That's important. Those were the requirements we detected. And after some research, we were almost all of us, so we said all of us agreed on that, okay? That the main thing was to design a toolkit with these requirements. And which was the solution? It was a tool. The solution was the toolkit, you know, perception matters, okay? And the perception matters is made out of 5 booklets. The first one is the, you know, sorry, I went too fast. The first one is, you know, the guide. The booklet trying to guide the actor, the manager, in the whole procedure. From the public manifestation of the problem till the response, okay? The second one is a booklet to provide with immediate response, because sometimes before you have the full picture of the problem, you need to provide with some response. Otherwise, the problem will go worsen, because people will see inactivity from the public actors, okay? And you should provide with criteria how to detect that you need a fast answer and which answers should be provided in this context. The third booklet is about tools and methodologies, which tools could be used by the public managers to design and to provide with response, the guide of response. But the guide of response is not a recipes guide, it's criteria that try to guide depending on the problem you detected. You could resort to several criteria of response, but you should decide which one is better. Okay, but I insist it is not a recipe. And the last one, but not least, a communication kit, because we discovered that the main thing in this area is communication. When there is a crisis of insecurity, the main thing is communication. Because if you don't communicate, somebody else will do, and you don't know which aims. Okay, so let's go on. The end users we should take into account that we should support a multi-agency approach. It's not the idea of sending the police officers. So the target users should be public officials, mainly working in the municipal field, maybe in some case with the name of prevention officers, as is the case in the Barcelona municipality. But in some cases, the name is security manager or prevention manager or whatever. Okay, or heads of security at the municipalities. Or even in medium and small municipalities, since they don't have a very large administrative structure, in those cases, it could be the police manager in the area in charge of devising, or preparing a response. So those were the target users in our minds. Okay, I already dealt with that. So the first tool tried to, first of all, to make the people understand what's subjective security, what's feelings of insecurity about, okay, and which should be the protocol or the procedure to follow once you are facing. You are coping with a public expression of insecurity. So, first of all, you should which sources you could consult, you could resort to in case that you see the situation is quite serious. Which measures could you should take at the first moment, and which methodologies how you should use the different booklets. That's this scheme. Okay, you should start by putting posing you the main questions. See, the guide helps you to say, okay, you should think of who is there, why, where, and so on. And you should ask yourself whether there was a similar problem in the same area before, if there was a similar problem in the city, if so on and so on. And we are telling the people, we are providing the users as a sort of checklist about what questions they should pose themselves in order to identify the problem. And at the end, they should have identified the problem. And in case they are in trouble, they should resort to the different methodologies that we propose. And even we propose them which actors could be interesting to talk to. If there are public services in the area, if there are social services, if there is a school, if there is a medical center, if there are associations, neighbors associations, that's the checklist about which sources you could have, objective or quantitative and qualitative ones. But it's quite simple. The second booklet is, to identify level of risk and the need for a quick response. And this is a new one. This chapter didn't exist in the first version of the toolkit. It was during the demonstration phase that we discovered that we lack this part, because practitioners told us, but we can't spend 3 weeks to provide with any response, or 1 month in cases with a lot of political, echo, because we need to do something. And that's why we rethought, all the toolkit, and we introduced a first moment to think of using urgent measures. Okay, then we provide with some practical advice in different methodologies that all of you know. The process mapping, the focus groups, the explanatory walks. But it is not an explanation of these methodologies, because we know that there are manuals dealing with that. We provide with practical advice how you should use that in a very practical and acceptably quick way. Okay, it's a sort of tips. I insist, they can always resort to manuals. The first one is, once you have identified the grounds, what is behind the full one, you have the full picture. Depending on what you have found, you should orient the solution in one way or another one. And we remember users that maybe if the problem is that people are isolated, people are close at home, we remember that this is a way of keeping insecurity higher and higher and higher, because the more isolated people are, the more unsafe they feel, for instance. And depending on what they have detected, we provide with lines of solution, but not recipes. Not recipes, because it's impossible to give recipes. And the last one, as I already mentioned before, is the idea of communication. People should be aware the importance of communication, and they should be aware that now with social networks, they have practical instruments, because before, if you work for the municipality, the only way to communicate with the people was through the media and by official authorities, and it's very slow. It makes no effect. But now you can contact the people through Facebook, Twitter, and so on, and we can be very immediate in order to destroy, fake news or rumors or whatever, or in order to provide with a faithful information about the situation. And we provide with some criteria. It was the head of the media office in our municipality, on our department, on our government, who provide us with the tips, and they were checked with the whole team. Okay, but it was an expert in communication who advised us on how we could guide the users with this communication toolkit. So the demonstration, we check it in a crisis of feelings of insecurity in Barcelona, in the whole part of the city, in the neighborhood of El Raval. In January 2020, days before we had the consortium meeting in Barcelona, some people were going to the street to complain about insecurity in a particular part of El Raval because of the narco apartments. The narco apartments in El Raval was an old problem. That means that squatters occupy empty apartments, and most of them devoted to drugs trafficking. It caused a lot of alarm, feelings of insecurity, although from the point of view of criminality, it's not like that, but it's uncomfortable, okay? So we checked that the municipality from 2015 had already taken important measures, different measures, not only police rights, that yes, but the driving or trying to put the empty apartments in the area of social housing and so on, and other ways for the owners who didn't accept to offer their apartments for social housing. The municipality advised how to make the apartments safe to resist, squatters. Okay, there have been a lot of measures already implemented. No, and we presented the toolkit, and we train the people who should help us, assist us in this phase, and we carry out a process of we apply the original version of the toolkit to this problem, and end users were quite satisfied, because since all of them were working in the area of El Raval, they agreed with the result we provided with. Security in its objective term had been increased. I mean, the criminality was lower. Even drug trafficking was lower. But the problem was that people felt abandoned, but not by the police, but by the institutions. And that resulted in a feeling that we are not safe here. But the main thing was the lack of institutional communication, but not the police. I insist, not by the town councillors for security. No. I mean, in general, they thought that the municipality didn't take care of them, and that made them feel unsafe. It was very important, this conclusion, because at the beginning, some of us, we thought that there was really a problem of very high criminality, and there was criminality. But for instance, most of the calls to the 112 phone number were about strange people in the area. The first item that caused calls to the 112 was, there is strange people in the area. So yeah, it is a problem for security, maybe, but it's not necessarily a problem of criminality. Okay, although there were crimes too. So the implementation and the diffusion has been, I would say, we are quite satisfied. We had a workshop with people from Catalan municipalities. There were more than 200, was online, still in the pandemic period, in the more serious pandemic period till now. We have more than 200 attendees, most of them mayors or town councillors. And the feedback was quite positive. They thought that it could be useful for them. In the questionnaires, what they answer, okay, I think that it could be practical. We presented it in Nice 1 month ago in the International HumanCentred Conference. There was 21 attendees from Catalonia, from Portugal, from the French Security Forum, academics from Portugal and the UK. At least some of them are here. The feedback was quite positive too. Actually, we got too little criticism. I think we need more criticism. And I'm finished. And now we did something similar for the Criminologist College in March at the Police Academy Summer School at the Autonomous University of Barcelona last week. And I am traveling from here to Seville to talk. In my case, I will not talk about the toolkit, but about what I consider is the police model resulting from the project. And my colleague Ana, she will introduce the toolkit at the Spanish conference Criminology in Seville next Thursday. So, and there has always been interest from other cities and countries through the European Union projects and as Icarus. Thanks a lot. I think I respected more or less the time. Caroline. Okay.
You did, Frances. Thank you very much. So we've got time for a question. Would anyone like to ask a question? Yep. Someone bring the microphone.
Thank you. Margot Caron again from the Prevention Service in Uccle, commune of Uccle of Brussels. Just a question, so if I understand correctly, the tool is used by different professionals in the field on top of their work. So there's not like a person doing all the work of gathering the information and then trying to work with the people to implement. It's a tool that you can use on top of your other tasks. I'm asking because it's a very interesting tool, I find, for what we need to do. The problem is that we always have short resources, and so a lot of the time this kind of work is put on the side because we don't have the time to do it.
It can have different uses and users. What do I mean? I think that somebody should be in charge of the whole procedure. But in some cases, the one in charge can ask somebody else taking part only in a partial part of the analysis of the response to have a look on the book on the methodologies booklet, because it is not necessary that everybody use the whole list or the 5 booklets. It's depending on the needs. But our recommendation is somebody should be in charge of the process, and this person should, in some cases, advise the other people taking part in the analysis or in the response procedure to have a look on the communication kit or in the response kit or whatever. So it could be different users and uses.
Thank you very much. So thank you very much, Francesc. So we're pleased to then move on to our second tool regarding feelings of insecurity, which is the Insight tool. And have we got Anke and Melanie? So we've got Dr. Anke Schröder and Melanie Schulte, and they're from the State Criminal Investigation Office of Lower Saxony, or the Kriminalamt in Niedersachsen. Okay, welcome, and
Thank you.
over to you.
Thank you. No. Das ist doch richtig. Funktioniert das? Da. Okay. Yes, thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, my colleague Melanie Schröder and me are pleased to present our tool Insight. It is a practical toolkit for measuring and mitigating feeling of insecurity in urban places. We are coming from the Criminological Research in the State Office for Criminal Investigation of Lower Saxony. Melanie is a sociologist and educational scientist, and my name is Anke Schröder, and I'm an architectural sociologist and responsible for the Center of Competence of Urban Security. As an embedded research institute in the police structure, we have a mandate to conduct research for the police and to process scientific findings in such a way that they add value for the police work. I would like to give a short overview why and how we are involved in the field of urban security and the question of measuring and mitigating citizens' feeling of insecurity. Aha. The main role of the State Office for Criminal Investigation is to investigate, detect and prosecute criminal offences and crime prevention. In the context of preventing hazards, police has the task of preventing crime from occurring in the first place. In our past research, we have identified the connection between objective crime and subjective feeling and fear of crime and the crime opportunity structures and the design of public built and social space. Thus, the obligation to participate in urban crime prevention is anchored to the police service audience on the conduct and development of police. We call it PDV 100. Crime prevention includes the area of behavioral and situational prevention. Therefore, it can be said that crime prevention in urban design and planning is one part of the situational prevention. It's important to add that it is always an interdisciplinary approach, and the police is one player in the crime prevention landscape in Lower Saxony. Since establishment of the Competence Center of Urban Security in 2017, Kurbas has a political mandate to develop measures to address urban security in new urban development spaces and in existing areas. The police are therefore interested in understanding and addressing the underlying causes of citizens' feeling of unsafety. With the interdisciplinary approach of criminological research and gender planning, Kurbas identified that citizens' perception of safety is crucial to the use of public space. During the CCI research, we started to identify the causes of the feeling of insecurity. We quickly realized that all previous approaches, such as media reports, data analysis, or public space assessment, were based on external professional perspectives. Therefore, with Insight, we developed a tool that also gathers the perspective of residents and citizens. The focus of the tools addresses the everyday life situation of the experts in the field of crime prevention and in urban design and planning. Now my colleague Melanie will explain the tool we developed for measuring and mitigating citizens' feeling of insecurity.
Thank you. The Insight tool, Einblick in subjektive Sicherheit, which means in English, insight into subjective safety, is a practical tool for measuring subjective unsafety, understanding crime opportunity structures in public space, and enabling cooperative collaboration. Who are the end users of the Insight tool? The tool addresses all actors responsible for security, safety, and qualities in public space. This includes actors like the police, municipality, representatives, crime prevention council, neighborhood management, housing companies, as well as citizens. The Insight tool lines out a 5-step process to evaluate security aspects and perceptions of safety in the public space from various perspectives. It considers existing qualities and risk potentials, detects risk factors such as crime opportunities, and enables cooperative collaboration of different actors. The 5 steps or the 5 components can be carried out step by step in a linear process, whereby the result of the 5 methods complement each other. Through the execution of all 5 elements, Insight provides a comprehensive, holistic, geo-referenced picture of the security and safety setting at the given location. The Insight tool can be used when a situation has been identified as a disturbance of safety in public space, and this can be a situation with dominant social groups or a situation where public space is not used or avoided. Other situations are pending redevelopment or modification measures, and for upcoming renovations and redesigns, the understanding gained can provide direction for a joint and coordinated approach. So the first element of Insight tool is the initial inventory of the neighborhood. And during this method, the current situation on site is recorded and mapped with the help of safety relevant criteria, like how the lighting situation is, or the orientation situation, or if there is vandalism or graffiti or anything destroyed or damaged. Possible potentials, deficits, or risks are recorded by taking photos and videos, both during night and day, since a public space looks different under different light conditions. With this method, it is possible to identify qualities of daily life as well as potential safety risks and deficits. For example, places and situations that potentially cause day and night specific feelings of unsafety. The next element is the small-scale police report on crime and incivilities to assess the objective safety in a specific area. This report is based on police data and therefore can only be prepared or carried out by the police itself. But this steps enables an offense-specific view of the selected area and helps to analyze the actual rate of crime and incivilities in a specific local area for a specific time. With this report, it can be analyzed which space-related offenses such as assault, threat, damage, theft, or incivilities have taken place in the area, how often and where. Based on this data, it can be analyzed which circumstances favor the modus operandi and how crime opportunity structures can be identified. Furthermore, it shows which location characteristics make concrete offenses possible. The next step, no, this was one too far. The next element is the non-participative observation. And this method, with this method, different usage behavior of different groups can be recorded to identify preferred, little used, or avoided routes and places. This enables a detailed analysis of use patterns in a specific socio-spatial situation and allows conclusions about the subjective feelings of safety. We use the Burano method as a guideline here, a method to investigate the usability of places through the use of public space. Sometimes a bit fast. No? Back. Yes, this is the right one. The next step is the fourth component of the Insight tool is an initial, the interdisciplinary walk around your hood to assess unsafe spaces. This method is carried out with so-called experts, and these experts can be all actors who feel responsible for security and safety issues in public space and who have the aim to strengthening the residents' feelings of safety. This includes the police, the public order, office planning and social work, but also crime prevention councils, neighborhood management, and housing companies. A walkthrough directs a professional view of the experts with the help of a guideline of safety, relevant criteria such as lighting, littering, or visibility, and evaluates the quality of a space from a safety-relevant perspective. Possible risks and deficits, but also qualities can be recorded. The experts evaluate the space not only from their own perspective, from their own professional perspective, but also from the usage perspective of certain groups of people, like residents. By taking over different everyday perspectives, this could be the elderly woman who walks around in the neighborhood with her walker, the young women or woman who came from the bar in the dark, or the little boy who wants to play football in the neighborhood. Oh, don't have to do anything. The next element is the method of mapping unsafe places using emoji markers. And this is a method designed to capture the residents' lived experience and perception of safety, as well as their feelings of insecurity. This method helps to start an open discussion about favored or avoided places and routes, as well as places of fear. This is a new developed method within the CCI project to fill the gap, the lack of residents' participation in the process of measuring citizens' feelings of insecurity. So describing good and bad spatial perception is, however, sometimes unusual and unfamiliar. So therefore, the method uses a low-threshold approach with different little helpers, we call it so, to remembering the area or places and to make it easier to talk about perceived feelings. The method uses, for example, a map of the area with a focus on streets and the surrounding, photos and videos of the first step, the initial inventory of the neighborhood, as well as a digital walkthrough. Additionally, 7 different emoji markers describing different feelings can be stuck on the prepared map and help to describe feelings and are used as an icebreaker to open this discussion. All these little helpers make it easier to perceive feelings about places and to describe them. So at the end of these 5 steps, the results and findings of all these methods and approaches are summarized to receive a holistic georeference picture of the security situation on site and to identify responsible actors. Those responsible can then develop possible solutions and strategies to strengthen the subjective safety of the residents. The toolbox can be combined and used in a complementary way, so sometimes it's not always possible depending on available resources or situations. Therefore, Insight as a toolbox can be used in a requested resource and situation-specific way to assess the residents' feelings of insecurity, both from an external and internal perspective, so experts and residents' perspective. Yes, and this is how our toolbox looks like. And it comes with a description of all the 5 elements on method cards inside it, so here, and as well with some material like the emoji marker stickers and the guideline for the walk around your hood. And yeah, if you want to have a closer look, then you can join us at the stand and have a look into it. Coming to the practical part of our presentation, the demonstration. Since Insight tool was newly developed, it was necessary to test the toolbox with its five elements. Based on the CCI scenario in 2019, we selected a neighborhood in Hanover and a tram station in this neighborhood for testing the Insight tool. The aim was to investigate whether elderly residents are deterred from using the tram station due to feelings of insecurity, and therefore the use behavior of the tram station and possible perception of unsafety of elderly people should be investigated. So coming to the results of the demonstration phase, the first method, the small-scale police report on crime and incivilities and the initial inventory of the local context are already established and well-functioning procedures to receive an overview of the local security situation from an expert's point of view. Each of these methods is already used by our Competence Center for Urban Security. The non-participative observation has proven to be a well-suited method to capture the behavior of different groups in different locations, but it requires a high amount of resources. So in order to be able to record a high number of people at the location, it needs 2 people to carry out the method, and additionally, it also requires some experience in using it or in doing it. So, however, it is worth applying the method, as its insight can be used to verify previously collected information. For example, during our demonstration, we noticed that the tunnel was heavily used, also at night, even though we had identified it previously in our initial inventory as a possible space of fear. The walk around your hood method is also an already established and well-functioning procedure and has been proven as an added value for all local stakeholders. It enables a discussion on an equal base about a real situation in place, and furthermore, the method enables a sensitization of local stakeholders for the importance of security aspects in public space. The emoji mapping method was, as already mentioned, developed during the project and also during the pandemic. Therefore, we were not able to use this method as often as we wanted, but we conducted two pre-tests regarding readability of the map, the handling of the emojis, the understanding of the photo and video material, as well as the usability of the method in general. The pretest showed that the emojis and the map are easy to use and to understand. Furthermore, the photos, videos, and the virtual walkthrough helped initiate valuable discussions. However, the method showed clear differences in the perception of space between day and night, which is why both conditions should always be considered to get a comprehensive picture of the situation. So the Insight tool was developed and tested, and we all know this, that the development of a tool cannot end here, so we have to implement it into practice. So the necessary question is how to introduce Insight to possible end users and how to implement it into practice. For this purpose, we undertook different kind of actions. As you can see here, we, for example, organized an online workshop with police officers for crime prevention from all over Lower Saxony to introduce and discuss the toolbox. Furthermore, we presented Insight on various conferences like the DPT conference, the EFOS conference in Nizza, or the DPT online webinar series on the CCI project. I think with this action, we already introduced Insight to a high amount or high number of possible end users. And the feedback we received so far has been very positive, like very comprehensive tool with clear methodologies and process. And for now, we have received several inquiries already from the local police and municipalities to send them our Insight tool and to advise them using it. Therefore, we are looking forward to see many of these actors using our tool. And this brings me to the end of our presentation. Thank you so much for listening, and we are now looking forward to your comments and questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Has anyone got any questions? Okay. Then I'll let Anke then make a remark. Then you go ahead, Anke.
Okay. Just to let you know that we are in a complicated situation because we did a lot of material and a lot of information and workshops to use our new tool. And at the end of CCI project, Melanie will leave the State Office for Criminal Investigation because it's the end of the project, and I really don't know how to handle all the questions will come after the project. And this is also the point we discussed before. We are not so many people in this competence center for urban security. And I really don't know. We have our first 5 questions to make this walk around your hoods and to use the emoji mapping marker. And I'm not very sure if it's possible for us, without this research stuff and person, to work in this field quite longer. Okay.
Thank you. Does anyone else want to ask a question? No? Then just to say, I quite agree. I mean, we've all really benefited from working on the CCI project together. Gian Guido. Yes, we've all really benefited, and what it's allowed is that, because the project was initially 36 months, and then it was extended another 3. And so we've had a long period of time working together, which means that you can really make a difference in terms of actually developing something and implementing it. So it has been, great that we've been able to work together. Jean Guido, you've got a question.
It's just a clarification. The first map realized a bit before the social observation is made just by the local police. The previous mapping.
The initial inventory.
Yes.
The first step.
Yes, the first step. Is realized just by the local police or other department of the municipality?
Yes,
there are other actors involved?
You know, this is a kind of mapping a situation under gender issues. That means that you don't map the public, the transportation situation and not the streets. You have a look at the places where you can sit. You have a look at places where you can meet or where you can play with your children and things like that, yeah? And this is a kind of work we do in the Competence Center for now, but we would like to give this knowledge to the planners, to the city planners, that they can do it to make the added value of the place, of the space for the users.
Thank you.
So thank you very much then, Anke and Melanie. We've now got a coffee break and we're coming back at 15:20. So just to say that in terms of when we come back, we might need to just clear the tables a bit. So do bear that in mind. If you could put some of the things in your bags, that would be really helpful for when we come back. And I'll close the conference for the people that are listening online. And for the rest of you, I look forward to seeing you at 15:20 after the coffee break. And just to remind you that the session, the workshop, will not be live streamed. Thank you very much.